Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 2 in the discourse Tzion b'mishpat Tipadeh 5672, which is the 11th discourse in the overall book, B'Shosh Ekdimu 5672. And this is going to be the second class in chapter 41. Okay, so we're beginning our exploration over here in the fundamental difference that there is between Chachma and Bina. That Chachma is the experience of Chachma, both in the human experience down by us and also in the divine experience above in the Sefirot, is that Chachma connects to experiences, touches, and reaches the essence, or Chachma reaches the. Hold on just 1 second. Yeah. So where Chachma reaches the essence of any given idea, and Bina only recognizes or grasps or understands the externalities of it. And that's the difference of Chachma. Chachma allows a certain reality, a truth, to enter into it fully. And Bina tries to modify it, so to speak, to fit the space of the recipient. And when you're modifying something to fit your own space, that means you're not taking it to its entirety. You're taking it only to the level that you're able to take it. So in Chachma, there's much more bittul than Bina. Because in Chachma, the Chachma is not insisting on retaining itself in order to, and grasp with retaining itself while it's engaging with whatever it is engaging with. Chachma is willing to be completely overwhelmed by what is coming into it. Bina already is demanding borders and boundaries and sets up its guardrail and wants to grasp only in a way that Bina is going to remain comfortable with the idea. So in that sense, the Bina is only taking the external. I'm not allowing myself to know you as you truly are, but only in as much as I can handle you. That's kind of, and I would like you to be kind of. That's the limitations of the Bina. He was only asking the question in last class. Don't we know that it's true that the higher experiences of Chachma is a full visual. It's not logic, it's not understanding, it's not definitely not understanding, but it's also not even an experience, a logical type of an experience, an intellectual experience. It's like we discussed last week, we gave it more of a name, like a prophetic experience. It's almost like, or a vision, seeing something with allowing a certain MS, a certain truth to show itself in the fullest to the person. And that's true in the higher levels of Chachma. But he did ask the question, but then there is the lower end of Chachma, where Chachma then transmits to Bina, which in last class we called it the tail end of Chachma, which we associated with the Yesod of Chachma, Yesod Abba, the Chachma's ability to transmit further, which over there, it is an intellectual point. It is a point of logic. And what the Bina does now is it takes that point and it elaborates on it, it opens it up, it dissects it. So that would seem like the Chachma and the Bina are one continuum, and that they're not so fundamentally separated from each other. So that was his question. How do we then saying that Chachma is completely above the Bina entirely? Chachma is a Yedias, is a internal experience, and Bina is an external experience. That was the last question we left off in last class. So now we suggested answer. We already brought the suggested answer last time, and he refutes it. And then he's going to give us a much deeper understanding of what Chachma really is. So let's see. We can say that this itself is a reduction of the light in Chachma itself. That this that we say that Chachma is Nekudas HaAskola, Chachma is already the beginning of an intellectual type of an experience, that's the nether part of Chachma. That's where Chachma is considering Bina, so it's bending down to Bina, so it modifies the experience of the Chachma so that Bina can latch onto it. So in order that the Chachma allows the Bina to latch on, Chachma has to reframe itself into the realm of logic so that it can pass something on to Bina. But in essence, Chachma really is higher. Now, supporting this idea, what would be the explanation to accept this? In order that the Bina should now come into being, in order to allow the next stage after the Chachma that Bina should come, the way all the spheros work is that they all prepare for the next level. There needs to be a reduction of the light. In chapter 38, we've already discussed this, that in every sphere itself, there is a downgrading of the light as it's moving through the various stages within that sphere itself. So in that sense, the Chachma passing on to the Bina of the Chachma, then to the Das of the Chachma, and then to the Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes of the Chachma, the emotions of Chachma, it's a reduction. And especially when it gets into the Netzachod element, it's reduction. And when it gets into the Yesod of Chachma, which Yesod of Chachma is the actual ability of Chachma to transmit and give over, then it's already greatly modified and contracted. And we can say, then the Chachma and the Bina have already some kind of a language, a shared language. But anywhere beyond that, Chachma speaks a completely different language than Bina. And what would that mean? That would mean like this: that we say that Chachma as well is the beginning of an intellectual experience that begins in the lower levels of Chachma. In the higher levels of Chachma is not an intellectual experience; it's a visual. The lower levels of Chachma is in a manner in which we know a concept, and we know it already in what we call, in some system of logic, of understanding. It's not really understanding, but at least of logic. And we would then say that means the diminishment of the light. When I'm not seeing it as it truly is, but I'm already logicalizing it, understanding the logic of it, then that's the diminishment of the light of Chachma. Since we know, and that's a given fact, that in every sphere the light is far more intense. That means in general, what that mean that sphere, that attribute or that power is far more intense in the upper spheres of that power, and then within that power itself, when it gets to the lower spheres of the power, it reduces its light, so it's less potent. So now we're going to translate. He wants to suggest that to translate the lessening of the potency of Chachma is the transformation from Chachma being like this prophetic visual, this experience of like some kind of a visual type of being shown something, as opposed, and then later it becomes some kind of a conception, a logical conception. We would then argue that again, he's going to negate this, but let's see what would have been the argument. What would have been expected? The madregas al yain is the higher levels of Chachma, and l'mayla v'aseichel v'asaga is beyond intellect and completely beyond grasp. which means that Bina is not able to even begin to touch that, because Bina is grasping. And Bina can only work with grasping where there's already intellectual point. But this is still higher than any form of intelligence. However, but the lower levels of Chachma, there is a modification that takes place. It's some kind of reformatting that takes place in Chachma itself, in that which Chachma took in. As we discussed, Chachma is like a window, allowing something to go in, allowing light to go in. That light that comes into Chachma gets modified and in a certain kind of reformatted, and it becomes a form of intellect and grasping. And then, and only then, it's a source for Bina. And then it becomes a makar, it becomes a source for the grasping of Bina. That would be possibly the answer. But in truth, this argument is faulty, or this explanation cannot be accepted. Because if this would be the truth, then that's not called diminishment, that's called a complete remaking or a complete makeover. It's changing it completely. We might even call it a metamorphosis. And it's a new product. It's a new entity. And you don't have that within one sphere. New entities is what the next sphere is. After Chesed comes Gevura. So Gevura is a different type of an energy than Chesed. Even though there is an integration, there is Gevura and Chesed and Gevura, fine, because everything is b'eskalalut. But in essence, Gevura is something else than Chesed. But within the Chesed itself, everything in Chesed is kindness. And everything in Gevura is chesed. Yes, it's within the Gevura, you have notes of Chesed within this Gevura. I get it. But it's still Chesed. To go ahead and to say that in the higher levels of Chachma, it's completely not intellectual. There's no intellectual. It's not even the beginning of the intellectual experience. And at the bottom of Chachma is when it becomes intellectual. That means that intellect, Seichel, and Hasaga is starting in the middle, in midway of Chachma. That means that in the middle of a level, that one level, that's not the same mahus. It's a different mahus. It's a different substance. This is not just a diminishment. This would be considered a change in the essential substance. Because sight and grasping is a world of a difference. It's not the same experience, just minimized. It's fundamentally a different type of an experience. And if we're going to say the madrega then in the lower levels of chachma is seichel, is what we might say intellect, v'hasaga, and grasping. And even if it's not grasping itself, but at least it's lending itself to the world of being grasped, which is going to happen in the next stage in the Bina. So then, this is already changing the very substance. What he's saying is that effects that happen in the dimming of a light within a sphere is exactly that. It's the dimming of the light. It's taking the same substance, but softening it. That can happen within a sphere. And it could happen. It's always the case in every sphere that the sphere is bolder and stronger. It's like you're making coffee. The reason I'm giving that example is because we got a new coffee machine here for the shul, and I had to make the first pot of coffee before, and it said for start. So it gave me the option of making it bolder or not bolder, but it's all going to be the same coffee. It's just going to be a little bolder, a little weaker, whatever. It's going to let the probably water linger a little bit longer in the amongst the coffee grind. So it's going to be bolder as opposed to come through quicker. So, but it's the same thing. It's just bold and less bold. So that you have in each sphere, the more bolder, more intense intensity of the sphere, or the lightening up of the sphere of the attribute. But it has to be the same substance. But what we would be saying over here, that suddenly midway through Chachma, or at maybe, let's say, the last third of Chachma, you're getting into the Netzach Hod Yesod of Chachma. It's a whole new, it's a new beast. I don't call it a beast. It's a new substance. This would be a change in the very Mahus Lagabe Madreges Al Yonish Chachma to the higher levels of Chachma, which are utterly beyond Seichel, intellect, and Asag, and grasping. And this is not possible to say that in one level there is a change in the mohus, in the substance, in its individual levels, in its gradations within itself. There should be a complete new reality, a whole new substance, a change at the essence. That can't be. The inyan amiyot, when we speak about diminishment, that not only could be, but actually is, hurak, what that suggests, or what that means, uzrak masha'or mismat, is that the boldness of it, the light, the potency of it becomes lessened. And it's not so dominant, it's not so strong, it's not so sharp. It's in the same. It's like turning sugar into lemon. It doesn't happen. Sugar doesn't become lemon just because you dilute the sugar. It will not become lemon. It's changing it. And lemon will not become sugar. You could take something that you put in too much lemon in it and mix more water in it. The lemonade is just too strong, and mix more water in it, and it'll become less sour. That you can do. But the change, and that was, we do find there was a miracle when Hashem told Moshe to put in the bitter staff, and the bitter water became sweet. But that was a transformative miracle that God does. But the spheros are not created. Their system is not created to be miraculous. It's created to work through a certain, what we might say, natural system. And the natural system is a diminishment of something, but not a change of mohos. And this we can say, that at one level, or mismayet, that the light gets lessened from level to level. But when you go from the various different specific levels, meaning in every sphera, in every world, and there is the Or Klali, the general light, and then there is the Or Pratim, the Or Prati, which means the specific details of that sphera. And over there we can say, as it moves from level to level, from madrega to madrega, from detail to detail, the madrega pratis, from the specifics, it weakens, that we can say. But not that it should be a change in the mohus, in the substance of it. The hainu, meaning to say like this: the reason why the author, the Rebbe Rashab, does not want to accept that this explanation, that somewhere on the bottom of Chachma becomes intelligence, and before that it's completely an intake of light, or an intake of whatever it is, but not intelligent at all. But on the bottom it does become already Seichel V'Asaga. So the reason he's rejecting it is twofold. Number one, as we just explained, that you cannot say that in one madrega there's a mshino yamahos, there's a change in substance. But in addition to that, he says the implication that chachma is lamayla mahasaga, is beyond grasping. That bina is grasping, and chachma is lamayla mahasaga. The implication of that is that applies to the entire sphere of chachma. Even to the lowest. Even the lowest point of Chachma has to be above Hasaga. Because that's a rule we say, that Chachma is higher than Hasaga. Hasaga means grasping. Chachma, wisdom, is a stage above any type of grasp. I know, what does that mean? But if we're going to make the argument we said before, then we're going to say, this statement that we say that Chachma is higher than Hasaga, than being grasping, that's from Chachma's knees and upward, right? From the knee and imagine Chachma being like a parts of a person. From the knee and upward, it's higher than Hasaga. But from the knee and downward, going down to the bottom of the legs of Chachma, over there it's graspable. No, That's not the implication. And the Levad Zois, in addition to this, the Mashmos Inyan, the implication of the matter is the Chachma b'klolos madrigasa, that Chachma on her general level, gam b'madriga tachtoina shaba, even in the lowest level, b'chenas ma'ila be'etzem madrigasa legaba bina, is in a state of ma'ila, in a state of quality, and he's above bina. He doesn't emphasize so much that it's above hasaga, but it's essentially higher than bina. It's not like what we're saying now would be implying that the essential quality of Chachma over Bina applies only to almost to the bottom of Chachma. But on the bottom of Chachma, Chachma is then relative to Bina. That's not the what the implication is. But now, in addition to that, this is the point that we made earlier. Another reason we can't. This is not acceptable is because we cannot say she'eshinoi amahus. We cannot say there should be a change of mahus, of substance, in Chachma itself, in its individual details. So therefore, we have to come up with something about Chachma that is going to be true completely through and through in Chachma. That even the idea sichlius of Chachma, where we say about Chachma that Chachma is some kind of a idea sichlius, some kind of a point, because we're not going to deny that idea that in every intellectual experience, there's first a point, and that point is an intellectual point, and then the Bina comes and dissects the point. So there is a Yediyah Sichlis in Chachma. However, that Yediyah Sichlis is not the same type of Yediyah Sichlis of Bina, which means it's not the same intellectual ism of Bina, and even the lowest point of Chachma will carry something that is uniquely powerful and uniquely elevated that is only in Chachma, even at the lowest point. What he's really going to say is that Chachma, even in its lowest point, is always elusive from Bina. The concept that Bina grasps Chachma, that's almost like the garment of Chachma. But the actual Chachma, light, as it is even in the aside of Chachma, even in the Malchus of Chachma, even in the speech of Chachma, you might say even the lowest level of Chachma, the light that's in Chachma is the essence of the matter is shining in Chachma. And none of that carries over to Bina. What happens in the lower levels of Chachma is that this essence garbs itself into something graspable. And that graspableness of it, that's already where Bina is beginning to process. So Bina is really never is never sinking its teeth in to the essence of Chachma. Because Chachma and Bina are fundamentally different. So let's see how he develops that. It is known Chachma and Bina, the Chachma ubina nikra ayin v'yesh. It is known that Chachma and Bina are called nothing and something. Chachma is called ayin and yesh, and Bina is called yesh, something. Simply, it means that when you have a flash of Chachma, like the first epiphany of an idea, you still ayin. Someone stops you right then and says, "Tell me, I don't know. I start. Be quiet. I got something. It's very elusive. It's very hidden. It's very non-definable. And then when you get into Bina, then you have words, you have sentences, you have explanations, you have a grasp on it. It's something. It's deliverable. Here it's a very vague and undefined point. That's the simple meaning of Chachma's ayin and Bina's yesh. But on a more deeper analysis, that means ayin and yesh, the ayin is hidden from the yesh. That's the rule. And since an ayin has to always remain hidden from the yesh, that tells us that Bina never really takes the Chachma. We know that Bina does take the Chachma and does crunch it, does chew on it. That's never really taking the Chachma. It's almost like Chachma is creating a cloud, a puff, and Bina grasps that puff of the cloud, some kind of and that it can chew on that, but it never really chews on the essence of the Chachma, because Chachma and Bina are ayin and yesh. So even the intellectual language of Chachma, there is something in the stage of Chachma that is of essence, that is not chewable in Bina, that never goes into the yesh of Bina. Chachma nikra ayin, and now this that we say that Chachma wisdom is called ayin, like it says, Chachma me ayin timatze. Chachma stems from ayin. Now it's interesting, even though it implies that Chachma itself is not ayin, because it says Chachma me ayin, it comes from ayin. However, and that's true that some places it explains that Chachma is already called yesh, and only keser is called ayin. Keter, which is above Chachma, is called ayin. But in so many other places, this pasuk Chachma me ayin timatze is a description of Chachma itself. That Chachma itself is still has the quality of ayin, of nothingness. Bina nekra yesh, and Bina is called yesh something. Like it says, lahanchil, to give inheritance, ahavi, to those who love me, Hashem says, yesh, I'm giving them something. And it says those are 310 worlds of Bina. In other words, what happens in those worlds where the neshama gets pleasure and delight? What the soul gets is an understanding of godliness, a Bina experience. It says that Bina is the source of Gan Eden. All grasp in the divine, which is the pleasure of the souls, is all from Bina. So you see that Bina is called Yesh. But what this tells us, that means that when Bina comes from Chachma, even though we know Chachma gives birth to Bina, or they evolve, Bina evolves from Chachma, but the way it evolves is not through Ilah va'Allah, like we discussed earlier, where Midos and intellect and emotions evolve, where they have they're like a chain. They're like one overlaps in the other. One enters the space of the other. Remember, we were learning emotions start to grow inside the intellect. They're already existing like a fetus inside the mother. And then later, they're in a subtle hidden. So the emotions are not created at a distance from the intellect. Quite on the contrary, the intellect leans in, the words we used earlier in the last chapter, in the last mimer. The intellect leans into the emotions, and the emotions rises into the intellect. They're comfortable with each other. They don't clash with each other. But Chachma and Bina cannot coexist. When the intensity of Chachma is there, the Bina cannot be there at all. Because Bina needs Chachma to hide in order for Bina to even emerge. Because Bina's entire existence, yesh, the only way a yesh comes out, a something comes out, is if the energy called nothing that precedes it is not present anymore. The yesh cannot have even a little bit, even a droplet of the ayin creating it. That's like we say that the world is created yesh mi ayin, because us, to be finite creations, cannot even have a little taste of infinity, because it wouldn't allow our finiteness to exist. So the infinite power that creates us is utterly above and beyond us, beyond our understanding, beyond our grasp, because we're created yesh mi ayin. It's hidden from us. The Chachma, the nothingness of Chachma, who b'bchenes helam l'gaba yesh de Bina, is in a state of concealment to the yesh of Bina. That's the between the relationship between when one thing is produced from something else, but the way it's produced is through a like being created meaning creating ex nihilo, from nothing to something. That's called ayin and yesh. And then there is an unbridgeable gap between the two. There is no connection. And ilaviyalo and cause and effect, where the cause is very much present in the effect and close to the effect and supports the effect with its existence. It says to the effect, I'm here to support you. I'm backing you. I'm holding you. And the effect is leaning on the cause. It's not, I don't know how I landed here. Yesh me'ayin is where you find yourself existing. You have no idea what your source is. The ilavi olo, because cause and effect, that the olo, the effect, grasps its cause. And through knowing its cause, that's what helps it exist. That's what brings him into existence. That through the grasp that it grasps its cause. That supports its existence. An emotion needs a reason. Why am I feeling love to this? Why am I excited about this person? Why am I excited about this project? I need a reason. I need a logical explanation to it. So which means that even though intellect and emotions are two different things, but the intellect is always needed to support the emotion. V'yesh me'ayin, but something from nothing, is on the contrary. Sha'ayin mis'alim and ayash, that the nothing hides from the yash. She'ena masagoy said it doesn't grasp. Now, we would think that Chachma and Bina should never be this way, because Chachma and Bina is what? Chachma is a point, and Bina is an elaboration of that point. So, of course, in a sense, even more than the emotions and a logic, because of this, emotion and logic are two things. These are two stages in intelligence. So we would for sure think that the point has to always be, and that we do know that the point has to be present in the details, so that we don't travel into, we don't sometimes a person can take a point and run with it and mess it up so badly and go completely away from what the point was. And it's because they didn't protect the point when they went into the details. It's possible. So we say we have to protect it. Yet we are now arguing and saying that no, that really the real pneumius of the Chachma is completely not carrying over into the Bina, to the point that Bina will never know it and cannot know it. This is really cool. It's a really yesh me'ayin experience. And the only way its existence can thrive and exist is by the pre-existing ayin not being revealed to it. That the pre-existent nothingness would disturb its existence, would unravel it or destroy it if it would be revealed to it. Like if God would reveal, the ayin would be revealed in us, it would undo us. So he has to remain, like the Alter Rebbe explains, that there's the power of Hashem hiding, the power of our Gibor has to hide the Hagadol. Hagadol is the power of Hashem infusing chesed, energy to us to create us. And the Gibor is hiding that from us so that we can be something, or else we would dissolve in our source. So that's called the Yesh Me'ayin. Hashem's a Nikra Ayin, and that's why the source is called, this hidden source is called nothing. Hashem she'ena musik. It's not grasped in the source. And the same is also true with B'chinas Chachma Bina, Chachma Bina, Sha'ayin the Chachma, the nothingness of Chachma, Mis'alim B'chinas Bina is hidden from the Bina. And he asks, it's not understood. Isn't it true that the point, at least the tail end of Chachma, which is the logical point of Chachma, the point of the concept, does arrive, does come into the manufacturing, to the processing plant of Bina, where Bina takes that point and fleshes it out. The Chol Asagas Habina and the entire grasp of Bina, Hu Benekudas Haskala, is in that point, like the mother taking the seminal drop of the father and creating a baby through it, a child through it. The Eich Nikra Chachma Ayin Legabe Bina, and how is Chachma called Ayin, that the Bina does not know the Chachma? We have to say, Shagam Nekudas Haskala, that really the essence of the point of the Haskala of the Chachma, Hu B'chinas Havdalah Ma'Bina, never really is grasped by Bina. It's true, there is a point, but the neshama, the soul of that point, it does, and that's why we're going to learn about this next class. I'm going to save it for next class. We find that the sharpness you have in Chachma, that moment an idea flashes in your mind and there's such a illumination, you don't have that sharpness when you can come back and give me explanations and everything on it, an entire lecture on what all the ins and outs of it. The person does not have that sharpness like when you had that initial flash, because there is something in the Chachma, unless the person is going to go back completely to the Chachma experience. But in Bina, in the details, you don't have that illuminance. It's not there. To the point that it's called nothing to the Bina. And we're going to see in the next class why that is and how that is. And this is all leading us to the point to understand how Chachma is essentially above the entire planet of Bina, which will support the concept that he's explaining in the last two Maimarim, how all these levels that evolve from the Or Pnimi, from the internal light, are real differences, real stages, this light. And this explains the concept of Kav, which comes down as from level to level to level to level, fundamental changes that take place. Okay, Be'ezus Hashem.